Welcome to Unscripted with Marilyn Morales. Today's show is actually my 50th episode. I've been absent on a hiatus, as I call it, for the last couple of weeks, getting ready for the launch of Izzy's Legacy, and just trying to figure out what my next steps are going to be. And in those couple of weeks while I was waiting and trying to figure out who my 50th episode should be, I heard from an old friend. Now, my next guest is somebody that I met about 10 years ago. We were co-workers for the same company that I still currently work for. And even back then, we did not know that we had so many things in common, and that we would have more things in common moving forward. So let me share with you who my next guest is going to be. Her name is Suzanne Rocco. She and I both have our oldest daughters, both named Gabriella. They are both 25 years old. And let me share with you that her Gabriella is now going through a cancer journey. And that is what has now bonded the two of us. We've been in communication recently because now her Gabby is also searching for her match in the registry. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like for Suzanne. Suzanne has graduated with a Bachelor of Administration and has worked in the senior living healthcare industry for 10 years. Her experience in that industry, as well as her combined certifications and licenses, have aided her in becoming a 24/7 caretaker, support, and most importantly, advocate for her 25-year-old daughter, Gabriela. Suzanne, a wife and mother of a blended family with 4 young adult children, had to step away from the workforce, her family in New Jersey, and moved to Massachusetts as of January 2023. Gabriela received an unexpected diagnosis of B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Chemo treatments were started immediately as recommended, and now is awaiting a donor match for a much-needed bone marrow stem cell transplant. Let me welcome Suzanne to the show. Hello, Suzanne.
Hello. Nice to see you again.
Welcome to Unscripted. I am so, I don't even have words for how grateful I am that you're joining me for my 50th episode.
It's a blessing, and I think it was fate because of the situation that we was going through, and I'm honored. I'm honored that this worked out.
So fitting. As you know, I just had the launch of my nonprofit organization.
Yes,
which focuses on exactly what we're going to talk about: finding matches for people who are underrepresented in that registry. Talk to us a little bit about your daughter, when she was diagnosed, and the challenges that you've had.
Okay, so my daughter Gabriella, around October, November, she was just starting, achiness in her back, but she also has Ehlers-Danlos. So musculoskeletal achiness, bone pain, and everything is not uncommon for her. She kind of just manages through it, and she's a young adult, so she goes. Really in November, December is when the pain started getting localized and stronger and was affecting her work. She was calling out too much. She's had numerous visits at 2 different hospitals in the ERs in Massachusetts, where she currently lives now. I get a call from her saying that her friends literally had to kind of walk and drag her out and drive her to the ER. That is not my daughter. My daughter is a redheaded 25-year-old Gemini who's Italian and Puerto Rican. So depending and not being independent and doing what she needs to do is so far the polar opposite. So I said, you know what? Let me just take some time. I'll go up for a weekend. I packed for 3 days and never left. I
never came back.
Never came back. What we did find out is the pain that she was having kept getting a diagnosis as a kidney infection, but she never tested positive for urinary infections. when they would send it out to cultures, no bacteria is growing. So I said, you can't have a kidney infection if you don't have a urinary infection. It just didn't seem right.
Right.
But the back pain was getting more serious. It affected the mobility of her legs, the strength of her legs. She could not move her left leg at all. That was worrisome. So I took her back, and I said, "All right, we're not leaving until you get admitted because there's no way I'm bringing you home." So,
Right.
mommy, Mama Bear, was a little charged up, and she was admitted through many tests. They kept going. We kept going with the spine with her back pain, and I said, "Is there any way, since you're doing a scan of her back, they were just concentrating on the waist below?" I said, "Can you please do waist up? Let's do her whole spine, because
Right.
if it happens up here, it radiates just like
Right.
sciatica. You know what I'm saying? It starts one way, but meanwhile it's down your legs and your toes." So I was talking with the spine doctor. I said, "Listen, please, I've driven up here from New Jersey. This is like her third or fourth visit. Something is not right. This is not my kid. She has a very high tolerance to pain." And she was like writhing in pain. So he says, like, "Yeah, why don't we do it? We'll do it from the neck down." Thank God. I kept pushing. She kept begging for it because they found what they were calling um, a mass or something accumulating, and they couldn't tell what it was in her upper spine. That was the leukemia, we found out. So,
Wow.
so all from back pain and not being able to move her legs is how we found out, totally by mistake. Um, and the reason why it was never found, because they were just assuming, since it was like in the area of the spine where her kidneys were, and because she was so tender, and when you do the test on your muscles and your back, it was just too tender for her. They just assumed, okay, here's a round of antibiotics for a kidney infection. She went back. Here it is again. Another round of antibiotics. I'm like, well, if the first round didn't work and there's nothing going in the culture and you have a second round, this isn't right. So we pushed and landed, and she landed up 30 days in the hospital with the final bone marrow biopsy. She went through many scans, blood work, and that was another thing too that tipped us off. If They did lab work, but her back pain did not coincide with what I was seeing in the labs. So I'm not a nurse by trade, but I've been
Right.
around many nurses, especially you. And it's just common sense. You kind of know what certain levels kind of are off.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so they were looking at infections, right? Of kidney infection. They were diagnosing her.
Yeah, they
So,
said that was an infection. They thought maybe it was a spine infection.
but they did blood work. I'm assuming that blood work was done before giving a diagnosis of an
Oh,
infection.
many blood tests,
So
yes.
the blood tests, were they showing an elevation in a white count that led them to believe?
That's what caught my eye. She had no white count.
So she
Her
had
It was decreased. It was non-existent. Her first one, I think it was like 2.7. And
now
then
they did not question the fact that her white count was below normal versus above normal. That wasn't a question.
I actually questioned them. I says, this is my layman's brain. You guys are the doctors. But let me just rewind a little bit. My daughter has a background with a lot of medical courses. She's not a medical, in the medical profession, but she graduated with a double bachelor's in forensic science and biology. And she was on a pre-med track because she wants to be a forensic scientist. And she worked in crime labs with DNA for the state police. That's why she moved to Massachusetts. So she kind of knows what's going on. And she's very into her care, following up with specialists and doctors. So she kind of knew something was off too, but she just was weak. I mean, she was dealing with pain. So when I questioned, I says, in my layman brains, if you have an infection, doesn't your white cell count go up because your body's, charging up for a big battle? And why would your hemoglobin and red blood cells go down?
Right.
And why is that affecting her platelets? Because I'm reading off the same labs they're getting.
Yeah, you're reading all these abnormal labs, which would tell me that there's some things going
Yeah.
on,
And
but
I
they
said,
weren't.
Right. And I told one of the doctors, I said, you need to get a specialist in here. You're going to admit her. She's not going out tomorrow. This is not an observation. I said, her blood labs don't match her physical pain.
So what did they explain back to you when you questioned those abnormal labs? What was the explanation to you of why that was happening?
They didn't know. They clearly told me, we have no idea why this is like this. And I says, is it an autoimmune disease? Is it, she came from New Jersey. Is it Lyme disease? Is it
Right.
lupus? Is it rheumatoid arthritis? Because she had the Ehlers-Danlos. I says, there could be a lot of different things. She has other illnesses. Could this be triggering something with her blood?
Right.
I even said, is it a blood infection that knocked out her immunity? You got to remember, I'm talking with just
Layman's term. Yeah, you don't know. You just want to figure it out.
Like, yeah, I'm Googling, Dr. Google is helping me.
Yeah, that's the word.
I know it's the worst thing to do, but if you see the data, very confused, and I'm giving them things to look at. And let's expand on this. That was a very scary ER visit, but through many, they had infectious disease. They were looking at, they had an infectious disease team. They had a spinal team. Then the hematology team came in. Then came hematology oncology. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, all right, let's cross this off family history. So I'm going down the line of family history. My father-in-law, her dad's dad, had CLL, not ALL. So that was the first thing I asked. I was like, I don't know the connection. Could she have gotten this? Could she have inherited it? Like, she was fine. Why did this have to happen? And they said, because it was acute. It's not CLL. That's kind of inherited. ALL just comes out of nowhere. And literally that's what had happened. So lo and behold, after 2 bone marrow biopsies, a bone biopsy, about 200 blood tests, 8 teams of doctors. They even were doing neurologists because of the Lyme. The Lyme can deal with neurology. The Lyme can affect your autoimmune, a trigger thing. So we had all these teams of doctors, and everything was negative. And the last 2, the bone biopsy and then the bone marrow biopsy, is when we got the results. We found out on a Saturday night. Sunday morning, she started chemo. And I questioned that also. But because ALL, as you know, is very aggressive, it multiplies so fast that
which is probably why they wanted to start right away. They didn't want to wait any longer. But so for our listeners that are listening to this story, the biggest takeaway from this, and it's very similar to what happened to me, right, is that we had to be our own children's advocate, that we were seeing abnormalities. We know what's normal with our children, right? And our children will look, and my daughter did not appear sick, right? She didn't have the telltale signs that you would look for in somebody that would have leukemia.
It wasn't the common symptoms.
Correct. So no common symptoms, and my child couldn't talk and say, I have pain, right?
Right.
So it was like she just kept getting infection after infection after infection. She kept having ear infections and, things that I knew were just not normal, that were off. So I pushed for additional testing. And in her case, they didn't want to do labs because she was a baby, and they don't like to do labs on babies unnecessarily, right? But I insisted on it, and thank God that I did, to try to figure out what was going on with her, because if not, I would have lost her way sooner than I did, right?
Right. Well, that's what they're telling us, is that if we didn't catch this, she would have been gone in a couple of months. And I didn't come out here, I wouldn't have known. She'd be alone in her apartment, living whatever, thinking she had this really bad kidney infection, which never was. So, you have to push.
You have to push. If you know that something is not normal, don't be afraid to speak up, right? What's the worst that can happen? I think the worst that can happen is that it's nothing, right?
Right. I'd rather be overzealous, ask 1,000,001 questions. That's why we're in the ER. You got to figure it out. You want her history. We're trying to piece a puzzle together.
Right.
But we have to work together, and we have to listen. But I never go with any of my kids. I've always been like this. I always have my own set of questions and I do my own research. Just because you have to. And like you said, you know your child. My
Absolutely.
child is a young adult person now. She's 25. She's not like an infant like you had with your daughter,
Right.
but know them. And that's literally what I told one of the doctors when they didn't want to push for some of the tests. I was like, you're seeing her literally for 2 hours. I've known her for 24 years because at the time she was 24 when she got this. I says, I'm telling you, this is not my kid. We both have a high tolerance of pain. She shouldn't be in a fetal position writhing in pain.
Right.
And this she doesn't get sick like this. This is a kid that doesn't get sick.
Right.
She's
Thank God.
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we move forward. Now, talk to me. So now we're starting chemo, right? And
Yes.
when does the conversation now turn to we're potentially going to need a bone marrow transplant? At what point?
Probably around the fifth round of chemo. So now we're a couple of months in. They had mentioned because of some things that weren't found, a lot of those tests that they were doing in the ER, there was a big question mark. So they said for her, the best prognosis for her and the most successful thing to do for her was a bone marrow transplant because she's so young. Um, and has her whole life ahead of herself. And because this could be very, very aggressive, which it is,
Right.
opted to offer and say that she really needs it. So we did the 6th round of chemo, and then that's when we had the conversation that they're not finding a lot of matches for her. And I raised the question, well, what does that mean? What are you looking for? I wasn't very educated. I was starting to educate myself with Be the Match and, looking about bone marrow and transplants and all this other stuff. So I says, you have to help me out here so I can help you. They said, what are we looking for? Does ethnicity matter? And they came to me and said, yes, it does, because you're looking at the molecular genetic
Right.
core of
Right.
things. And I says, well, what are you looking for? And they said, well, we doing the research under Caucasian. I said, okay, but she's part Puerto Rican.
Right.
They were like, she is? And I was like dumbfounded. I'm like, number one, that's in the chart. So, okay, let's go backwards. But I says, why is your comment like that? My
Right.
daughters, both my daughters, are redhead, like auburn redhead. Both have blue eyes. One has blue, one has green. They're very fair skinned and they have freckles.
Mhm.
They're thinking Irish. Caucasian, which European is in the Caucasian group.
Right.
They never realized the Hispanic part of her. So I was like, okay, so we need to redo the search. Let's check off the box that she's Hispanic. I says this is great. We're gonna get more more matches. This is, this won't be so hard because they're telling me she has rare markers.
Right.
I said, okay, she has rare markers, that's good. But now you have another box that you're checked so you can expand the search.
Uh-huh.
That was an eye-opening moment.
Yeah. And what was their response to you?
So during this time, we did transfer hospitals, but the search requirements were still the same.
Right.
We met with the bone marrow doctor. He came in her room, and this, Marilyn, was about 2 weeks ago. The doctor sat in the chair right next to me, and he said, "Yes, you have rare markers. We're having a hard time." And I says, well, is it you're doing more than the Caucasian search again? He's like, yes. He says, I see that there's a Latin or Hispanic search that we need to do, expand it. We're doing it domestically, we're doing it internationally. But he says, I will tell you that is part of the difficulty. And I says, what do you mean by that? And he says, and from our conversations, and I know from your podcast and knowing about the Be the Match and your Gabriella, everything that's been done, I wanted to hear him say it. Like I was kind of like still dumbfounded. It's like, no, it can't be. It can't be. He literally said the words to me. He says the Hispanic communities and other ethnicities, their communities are underrepresented.
That's
But
right.
for your daughter, being only Hispanic and being Italian, um, that's where a lot of her rare markers are coming from, and we don't have enough Hispanics in the registry.
Right. And did he tell you that the mix in itself makes her percentage go down even further?
Yes,
So this is, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it brings home everything that I've been talking about from day one. And the
absolutely.
reason why I wanted to bring attention to this, because my baby was 15 years ago, right? When I lost her, she would have been 16, right? And the difficulty back then still exists today.
Absolutely. There has been no movement. There has been no change. It is still the same problem.
The same problem. There has been some movement. I will say that the percentages are better today than they were back then, but they're still bad.
They're
Okay.
very low. They're very low.
If you're mixed, so let's just put in perspective, right? So it's a 48% chance if you're Hispanic that you're going to find a match. 48% chance
8%.
Hispanic.
If you're Hispanic.
If you're Hispanic, I'm going to the next one. I'm going
Right.
to the next one. If you're African American, it's 29%. Look at that drop. And let's talk about Caucasian. That's 79%. 79 dropped to 48 for a Hispanic, down to 29 if you're African American, down to less than that if you're mixed. So if you're half this, half that, less
So,
than 29%.
yes. And that is the difficulty that we have. And I was shocked just to hear him say it. And from knowing you and your story and my research, even if we didn't reconnect, just the research and all the little pamphlets that they're giving me, it's right there. And it has not significantly changed. And to hear a bone marrow, a director who's going to be doing my daughter's transplant, literally tell me in the words that this is one of the major issues we're having.
And and do you feel as I do that the reason you yourself said you really didn't know a lot about this, right?
No.
You're educating yourself. You
Yes.
listened to me, you started going and looking and researching further. Your
Yes.
daughter, who has been studying biology and all of her studies, has never come across this information.
Never
So
taught
for
next.
me, when I look at this, it's exactly what I said. It's because we're not educated enough, right?
Yes.
We have to educate, and we have to go to where the people are to educate them about this. Even though Be the Match does a fantastic job at getting out there and getting the word out, it's still not enough. So those of us that are going through this challenge have to do our part too. I said, enough is enough about sitting on the sidelines and saying, oh my God, that's horrible. And I wish I could do something. It's time to stand up and do something, because we can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has to be posted in clinics, just your regular run-of-the-mill doctor office, generic practice.
Yeah.
When I go in there, I see all these other protocols, all these other pamphlets, which are great, which needs to get the word out. But you don't see anything about blood disorders, cancers, about how your ethnicity needs to be represented. Doesn't matter what the ethnicity is, you still need to be represented. There's no racism when it comes to, I mean, I'm sorry, this is my belief, I can only speak for myself, but there is no racism when it comes to being someone needing a stem cell match to save another person's life, or blood donations. Blood donations are another big thing. Blood donations, platelet donations, whatever you can do. Just go to a regular blood drive and try to spread the word about that. But I think we hear a lot about the Red Cross blood drives, and there's a blood shortage and everything. I think that kind of has to be matched, or they need to both coexist in my mind, because they go together. stem cells and blood. I mean, it's just, it
They
goes
do
together.
go together. They do go together. Recently, another coworker and I, we did on the same day. We were on the same week. We held bone marrow drive and a blood drive, right? And her sister had leukemia. So these are the two things that we know that when you're going through a process like this, are the things that you need: the platelets, the blood.
And
Um,
that was very surprising for me because I didn't know. You hear cancer, or I could, again, I will speak for myself. You hear the word cancer, you think, okay, they have to go through treatment, chemo. You think it's one type of chemo. That was a shock in itself. Gabriella had to go through something called hyper CVAD, A and B, which is a very aggressive chemo. It is very harsh on the body, but it comprises itself. And then there was another one that they needed plus steroids. She had 8 different type of chemos every month.
wow.
And that's harsh. She's been a recipient of red cell blood donations. She's had almost 30 transfusions of just red blood cells. She's had close to 25, I think, of platelets. You don't think that this is needed when you hear the word cancer. It affects everything, especially with leukemia and blood cancers. I have this journal. So this is, I bought it in the gift shop. I said, okay, there's too much information coming at me. So
Right.
I got it, just to kind of write it down and make myself notes, and then I can relook at it. I'm on another book, and it's a little bit bigger. It's not the little one from the gift shop. Because there's a lot that goes with it that I never expected. Just through anybody's cancer journey, everyone is different, but for some reason, when it comes with blood cancers,
Cancer and disorders. And stem cell transplant will treat over 70 blood
yes,
and disorders. Not just cancer. There are lots of other disorders that it treats, right? And it's as simple as, let's talk about what that donation process looks like. It's
it's
simple.
a, it's a, like you're donating blood for the Red Cross.
Absolutely.
What has been told to me, the only difference, if you are found as a donor and you want to donate to someone and you're a match, you just get like some injections that kind of like boost your blood volume, basically, because
Yeah.
they're
Stem cells. It increases the count of those stem cells, the mother cell. So what's a stem cell? Stem cell is the mother cell that creates all other cells in your body. So it's
right.
the mother cell, the white blood cell, the red blood cell, all those cells.
And that also is very easy. You have a shot, your blood does its thing, and then they take it out through a regular IV, and there it is. It's in a bag, and it goes to the person. That's
Absolutely.
it.
And yeah, you have to hang out with some nurses. And that's not in all cases, but in the majority of the cases, like 90% of the cases, that's exactly how that process works. In a small percentage of it, they still have to go into the hip bone and get that out.
Yeah, we call it the old-fashioned way, where right. That's what my initial thought of the marrow transplant was, because that's all I know from when I was growing up. And if I heard anybody needing that,
Right.
Yes, that's still there, but they try to steer away from that because
It's not necessary. It's
really,
unnecessary to go through all that.
yes, and it's a little harsher to recover, you know. But it's so simple. It really is.
And
It's
to
not.
join the registry, even simpler than that, right? I say it's even simpler than brushing your teeth. It's easier than that. It's a
Yes,
swab of the cheek if you're between the ages of 18 and 40. There's
right.
more criteria that you have to meet. Please go to izzy'slegacyinc.org. There is a direct link there where it says Save a Life. Look it up. You can join the registry right from that website, right? The kit will be sent to your house. I have made it so easy.
The kit is sent to your house. You open up this tube, you swab, you put it back in, you put it in the mailer. You don't even have to pay for a stamp. You put it in the package that they sent you, and then you're on the registry. And God willing, you're able to help. If not one, maybe multiple, multiple people.
Listen, we're on a mission. We're on a mission to save lives, right? And this is something that is simple to do. You can save a life in life. When it comes to organ donation, usually someone unfortunately passes in order to give their organ. And in this case, you don't.
No,
You're
you're a
able to give
donor.
life in life,
Yeah.
right?
you're
It's
as
easier than that.
owner, you go on with your life, and you let a person who is battling this, no matter what age, go on with their life. Um, and just a little side note, that what I've seen, talking about a community being underrepresented, what I have experienced through this journey, and battle with Gabriella, anything over 18 to like under 40ish,
Mhm.
I think they're underrepresented as well. There's not a lot of the services. There's not a lot of programs, assistance, support groups. I've only literally found two for young people to reach out. Um, so there's a lot of work to do across everything. We're all here for a purpose, and part of our purpose, if you could do something so simple, just to donate some blood or swab your cheek and see if you could save a life. I mean, you go back to the rest of your day, go grocery shopping, go to the bank, deal with everything, everything else. It's very simple. It takes no time.
Less than 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes to register, to swap, to join.
Yeah, I've had friends of mine that have done it. They can't donate to her for whatever reason, and even some of the age constraints. My those who can, if they're over 40, they're really talking to their kids and their nieces and their nephews, and say, listen, your generation is making changes all around the world. Your voices are being heard. We're passing the baton. This is something that's affecting families, because it's not just affecting the person, as you know, it affects your whole families.
Absolutely.
It's
Family affair. That's what Izzy's legacy is about, because it's about the family. One person doesn't have cancer, the family has cancer, right? And we have the ability to do something. And
yeah,
my daughter calls that being overqualified. They call that being when you're over 40, you're overqualified. But I'm sure that nieces, nephews, children. So be an advocate and educate them.
that's what a lot of my friends have done. Since they can't help her, they're talking to their neighbor, their neighborhood kids. They're passing it down. They're like, come on, let's do it. So
Thank you so much for that. And anybody out there, again, I know I've said this already, I'm going to say it again. Izzy's legacyinc.org, right there. Get the kit sent to your house. If you check off all those boxes, go ahead. We're still searching for Gabby's match. We are still searching, right? We're in the search mode. We need a match. Her match is out there. They just haven't joined yet. So let's get the word out. Let's spread this awareness.
Please join. And if for any reason you're worried about the stem cell donation, doing the swab, then at least please go to your local blood drive. A lot of Just go to American Red Cross, put in your zip code, and it'll show a whole bunch of blood drives. That doesn't take much either, but it also saves their lives, because, like I had explained before, for the amount of blood transfusions my daughter needed, she wouldn't have survived chemo if she didn't have the blood donations as well. But the swab they tell you, they go hand in hand, and that's what we also have to spread. Both of these, the two parts, make a healthy one person. They're dependent on that. You have to have everything.
Absolutely. And listen, for those of you that think that you can't, I always tell the story of Isabella's donor. His name is Mike Hensley. And we always honor him because he joined at the same time that we were beginning our search, right? He joined at the same time for where he lived. They were having a drive at his work place of employment. And he was looking to try to match a little girl of a coworker. He happens to be, now we're full Puerto Rican. My husband's Puerto Rican, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So full check box Hispanic, right? We checked that box off. So when he joined and when I finally was able to speak with him, he happens to be Caucasian, right? And I asked $1 million question. How is it, if genetics play such a big part, that you were able to match my child, right? And his paternal grandmother was from Mexico. So he had mixed ethnicity and was able to match my daughter at a higher level than her own parents. So if you think that you can't match, yes, you can. Please try. Please help. Don't stop standing on the sideline saying how awful this is. It's as simple as joining a registry, simple as giving blood.
It's the simplest thing that you can do with the least amount of time, and it's free. It's free. It don't cost you a thing. It's free, and you pay it forward. You can't get a better scenario than that. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. 5 minutes out of your life, and talk to you. So when they say nothing is for free, that's a lie. This is for free.
Free. Amen. Amen, Suzanne.
Free.
Suzanne, any closing remarks?
Really listen to when someone is not feeling well. Don't generically just accept because someone has an MD, or you go to a specialist and you still know something is wrong. Your child. Be an advocate if they can't advocate for themselves, and as well as like my daughter can advocate for herself, but she needed me at some times to do it because she didn't have the strength. The pain was too much confusion. Just really take the whole picture in. These can be very stressful situations. It can be very overwhelming, but at some point, just take a step back, go through whatever emotion, and write it down so you can literally see it. You can always crumple up the paper later and throw it away. But if you have it, you can really start seeing and if the pieces are working or not. And we need everything is a puzzle. There's always a missing piece of that puzzle if your child is not feeling well. So you really need to zone in on that. And don't take somebody else's word for it. What are they going to tell you? No, we can't do the test. Okay, if they still having symptoms, then you take them somewhere else and say, I want this test. It was refused. Because if we never did that, if my daughter never asked for it and I didn't push for it and I wasn't there, she wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
All because they just didn't want to do the upper spine. And that's where it was located.
So advocacy.
Advocate
for your family members. And guys, join the registry. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining me on this very special episode.
And I'm honored. Thank you very much. Your cause is fantastic. And I tell everybody and spread it. It's just, we need to do this. There's too much going on in the world not to try to do something. Everybody has a purpose. Please let this be your purpose.
And this episode will be airing on October 15th. The anniversary of losing my Isabella is the very next day, the 16th. So in honor of Isabella, in honor of your Gabby, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
As far as the donation process goes, it is so simple and easy, and a lot of people are unaware about that. 90% of the time, it's very comparable to donating platelets or plasma in a blood center. So the first thing you can do is text Izzy's Legacy to the number 61474. You will receive a text link where you will be able to click register now, fill out the registration, and have a swab kit sent to your home. We also have tons of opportunities to do marrow donor registry drives where we can actually swab on site and sign individuals up in person. So there are many avenues for that, but once you're on the registry, it takes a couple of weeks for your swab kit to process, and then you will be in the daily searches for those who are searching for a match. If you end up being a match, you'll get a call and they'll ask if you would like to go forward with the donation process. 90% of the time, what they will ask for is a peripheral blood stem cell donation, shortly known as PBSC. And 10% of the time, what they will ask for is a direct marrow donation, which is from the back of the pelvic bone. So there are two different forms of donation, but more commonly it is going to be the PBSC.